With the story of Charlie Kirk being killed really gripping the headlines and the discourse and anxiety on social media really rotating around that story, we're missing some really important news stories that have come out over the last few days. And I would like to highlight one of them here. Our anxieties are really high. We are watching politicians on the right intentionally try to create a more volatile situation than already exists at the moment. The amount of disinformation and obfuscation I am seeing from politicians on the right, from Donald Trump to the governor of Utah, to, of course, Nancy Mace and beyond. Of course, it's incredibly irresponsible. It's incredibly anxiety-inducing. It increases the likelihood for political violence. And also conveniently, it buries stories about the ways that the Trump regime is incredibly fragile and they are floundering. So I would like to share the story because I think you and I can use a little dose of hopium and reality, right? And as well, this is a really important news story. We need to be grounding ourselves in facts and reality, and that includes not letting all the scary what ifs dominate not only the headlines but our thoughts, but also reminding ourselves of the ways that the regime is not doing well. We got to counter their narrative that they're all big and all powerful and can do whatever they want with the facts that they are failing in so many ways and that Trump continues to taco. He continues to chicken out over and over and over again. So let me share the story with you of how resistance actually works. I want to share the story of how vigorous opposition to fascism, standing up to a tyrant, is the only thing that works. One of my favorite sayings is that there is no amount of safety you can procure for yourself by appeasing a fascist. Resistance, opposition, standing up for the rule of law, standing up for our rights, that is the only way forward. It is the only way through. It is the only way out of this. Trump wants you to think he's all big and all powerful, but at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, he chickens out over and over and over. There's a reason that economists coined the acronym TACO in reference to Donald Trump and his tariffs. Trump always chickens out, and we have another example of that from this past week in Chicago. First, let me remind you of what Donald Trump said on September 2nd of this year.
Make your mind up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in.
Right, we saw days and days and days of Donald Trump not only insisting that he needed to go into Chicago to restore law and order or whatever, and he was going to send all of these National Guard troops there. He put out this really cringy post where he called it, Chipocalypse Now, right? And this real cringy attempt to rename the Department of Defense the Department of War. He said that Chicagoans were going to experience that, right? It made it sound like he was trying to declare war on his own citizens, on a city in the United States of America. And people were really scared. And when all of those threats were coming down, I once again was like, y'all, his attempt to put the military into LA failed. His attempt to put the military into DC, failure. They're pulling out troops. It's a disaster. Troops are having to spread mulch and pick up garbage. Just the most tremendous disrespect as he uses our service members as pawns in his political game. And then we heard, well, he's pulling troops out of DC and he's going to start sending them into Chicago. Once again, all the doomers were like, here's the military takeover of the entire country, perpetuating Trump's false narrative that he's going to be successful in occupying every major city with the military. As we were already seeing that attempt having failed in LA and currently failing in DC. I still had doomer after doomer be like, this is it, guys. This is the martial law. Like, Trump makes big promises, but he is the president of promises made, promises broken. Trump always chickens out. And when the people resist, when we see state and local elected officials resisting, Trump buckles more often than not. And even when he doesn't buckle, he still fails. So we saw Governor Pritzker stand up very vigorously and say, abso-fucking-lutely not. You are not coming here. We don't want you. This is unnecessary. This is authoritarian overreach. No. We saw rallies, parties, demonstrations in Chicago, especially after Trump put out this rhetoric that basically made it sound like he was declaring war on the city of Chicago. Right? He posted on his Truth Social that Chicago was about to find out why it's called the Department of War. right? Like clearly an intimidation tactic. And then we saw just a few days after that, he walked back those statements already, almost immediately after he did that big bluster. He had to walk it back and say, I didn't mean we're declaring war. He changed the narrative to, we're going to clean up Chicago. To which Chicagoans and JB Pritzker, once again, were like, you are not needed here. This is completely inappropriate, completely illegal. This is authoritarian overreach. We watched the governor of Illinois vigorously stand up over for whatever issues you may have with JB Pritzker, right? Vigorously standing up. He has basically, since Trump got elected, been speaking out against fascism, been defending the people of his state, doing his best to defend democracy. He is a good example of how you respond to a fascist. You do not give in to threats. You do not give in to intimidation. You do not roll over. You hold the line. And lo and behold, a couple of days ago, what happened? Trump tacoed yet again.
We're going to Memphis. Memphis is
That's the next city.
deeply troubled. And the mayor is happy. He's a Democrat mayor. The mayor is happy. And the governor, Tennessee, the governor is happy. Deeply troubled. We're going to fix that just like we did Washington. So we're going to Memphis. I'm just announcing that now, and we'll straighten that out.
National Guard?
The National Guard and anybody else we need. And by the way, we'll bring in the military too if we need it. But National Guard. But Memphis is, look, it's a great music city. It's, home of Elvis.
Blah, 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 blah. We don't need to hear the rest of that. But immediately this pivot of like, oh, let's just forget about Chicago because they actually stood up against me. And I'm going to pivot to Memphis where the governor is a Republican. Bill Lee, I think his name is, somebody who's not going to stand up and push back against Trump, somebody who's just going to let him do whatever he wants. Now, in that clip, you don't hear Trump talking about, and you definitely don't hear the reporters pushing back against like, well, what happened to Chicago? You're not going to Chicago now? You're tacoing on Chicago? And you're pivoting somewhere where the governor is going to play softball with you and support your authoritarian agenda? And in that clip, he made it sound like the Democratic mayor of Memphis was like down with this, was fine with this. And there's reporting out yesterday that Memphis Mayor Paul Young, who is a Democrat, has said he does not support National Guard troops being deployed to Memphis, despite Donald Trump in that interview telling Fox News that the mayor did. It's important to note that Memphis's crime rate is down 11%. But more importantly, that bringing in the National Guard doesn't lower the crime rate. This has nothing to do with crime. It has nothing to do with making American citizens safer. It is all about Donald Trump trying to intimidate Democratic mayors, Democratic governors, Democratic voters, and trying to advance his authoritarian agenda. He wants you to start to accept that he can put the military wherever he wants. He can threaten you, especially if it's going to be around election time. But the thing is, y'all, in city after city after city, we're seeing Americans say, fuck off, we're not going to be intimidated. We're seeing mayors like Mayor Bass in LA, Mayor Young in Memphis. We're seeing governors like Gavin Newsom, like JB Pritzker, who are standing up to hold the line for the rule of law. And really crucially here, we are seeing residents of those cities refuse to take the bait. Trump wants a violent rebellion. He wants some way that he can invoke the Insurrection Act. He wants there to be riots in the streets so that he can justify sending in the military everywhere. And people are not taking the bait. They are in nonviolent protest out in the streets, exercising their First Amendment rights. He's trying to paint residents of those cities, especially Black folks in those areas, as thugs, gang members, violent criminals. And he's got egg all over his face because they're proving him wrong time and time again. They're not taking the bait. So he's got to jump to a different city. To me, the fact that he's hopping from city to city to city and failing over and over again, it really, really speaks of his desperation. This is the only play in his playbook. He doesn't know what else to do. He's desperate for this to stick somewhere, and it's not. So he's just going to keep jumping around the country being like, please let this plan work. I don't know what else to do. This has to work, you guys, or we're screwed. And it's not working. It's not working. The American people are not tolerating it. Democratic elected officials are not tolerating it. Trump is going to try this shit in Oregon. Tina Kotek, I hope you are watching Gavin Newsom and JB Pritzker and taking some fucking notes. So I hope this video is an encouragement for you. I also hope that it's a reminder that just because Donald Trump says he is going to do something, that does not mean he will succeed. More often than not, he fails. Either because the people stop him, the courts stop him, other elected officials stop him, or because he's a chicken shit and he backs out. we must continue to hold the line. We must continue to defend the rule of law and our rights. As long as we keep doing that, Trump and his authoritarian agenda, they can't succeed.